It's just Zoom. It's the mystery of Zoom.
I guess maybe they're assuming people are self-conscious, right?
Or we can say a zooming.
Assuming, that's funny. Hey, what is the design behind you? Because it kind of reminds me of a Peter Max.
I'm a visual artist, and that is a map that I painted, and it's an actual painting that my wife is a fifth grade teacher, and she has it in her room now. So she got a little. She was done with my old logo, so I got together and I was like, this makes sense. So I grabbed that, and that's the new design.
Well, I must tell you, as since you are a visual artist, Peter Max, the first time I was just telling my podcast partner, first time I ever saw art was the Peter Max Expo 74 stamp, and my heart skipped a beat. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I don't know if I'm familiar with him. I'm gonna make a note, but while I make that note, I appreciate you taking a minute out today. I'm looking forward to delving in. Before we get into your life, very interesting background of overcoming and triumph. I want to know, how did you survive COVID? The last 3 years was quite a deal. How did you get through it, and how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Oh, I so appreciate the question because nobody ever asks me. I think people are uncomfortable to ask these kinds of things.
Yeah,
Dude, I thought it was a sanity challenge because like I said, I think I emailed this to you. I was laying in bed like Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka for a long time. And what I would do, because I couldn't work, I would get up in the mornings. My son was home, and I would make sure have a little bean bag. We call it the blob in the living room. I'd walk downstairs, which took effort, and I would make sure to play with him because he didn't have recess. He didn't have kids around him except on Zoom. I wanted to make sure he had as normal of a childhood as possible. That was what kept me going.
yeah.
What is different for me? How are we about swearing on here?
Oh, go for it.
I don't take shit anymore. And I wouldn't say I took so much shit before, but now I really don't fucking take shit.
Good job.
And it doesn't mean I come at you because as Marshall Rosenberg says in nonviolent communication, there's the phase where you're taking shit. He doesn't call it that. And then there's the obnoxious phase. And then there's the phase where you can ask for what you want without being obnoxious. And I believe I'm in that phase. But I do not put up with disrespect, with contempt, with behaviors that cross boundaries. I speak to it. If the person's not willing to make the adjustment, I'm not asking them to be themselves, but to understand where I'm coming from, then I walk away. I walk away. It's not worth
Yeah.
fighting.
Absolutely. It's empathy. And I think that's hopefully what we got out of this mental health crisis, and what we went through is that we have a better understanding of each other, and we can reach out. Like, for instance, I've really ramped up. I've done jazz historically since 2011, and I've really reached out and been in this new community, and I love it. And I think that's the therapeutic nature of podcasting. I think that's why podcasting has gotten popular, because we finally don't have to have these network corporate muzzles on what we're supposed to say and think, and we can actually breathe, and we can actually say what we mean, and navigate and get through this. Because for so long we have very few entities. It's weird, like going through the TV channels now and having that latitude to watch anything that you want, do anything, but there's still a muzzle on all of that. You can't have that unedited um, venture into human consciousness like you can now, I think, more or less, with what we're doing with podcasting.
I agree. And I was creative for a living. And I was just talking to my wife yesterday how satisfying it is to do something where nobody's telling you what to do. Nobody's saying, I don't like the color green, so don't use
Yeah.
green.
Uh-huh.
It makes no sense. This is how we get to authentically express ourselves. By the way, are you a vibraphone jazz guy?
Oh, get out of town. The fact that you said that, I always say that. I am the biggest, that is the only bias I have on neon jazz, is whenever the vibes come up, I am like, we are like, anytime I talk to a vibes player, from Milt to whoever it is, Joe Locke, whatever it is, I'm in.
First of all, I have tears in my eyes, and I'm being serious because whenever I'll play jazz for someone who doesn't like jazz, I'll play vibra. I'll play
Oh,
Bobby Hutcherson.
oh,
I'll play, you know who I'm talking, Roy
oh,
Ayers, and they'll be like, "I like this. What's this?" The vibes just do it.
dude, the vibes. is the reason. It's the serum, it's the first tattoo, it's the first cigarette, it's the first shot of whiskey. It's that place that your mind goes to and you're like, I want this all the time.
100%. 100%. That's so true.
Yeah, I love it. And I reach out and love getting into it with the vibes people. I'll when we're done, I'll send you over. I think I did a vibes centric show early on in my career in the radio, and I'll send that over to you. But I went from Milt, Bags and Groove all the
Bags.
way up.
Yeah.
And
And so I want to ask, wait, I have to remember what the question was. Just give me a second. I'm hoping you can edit some of this out, but it was something about vibes. Oh, can you help me remember who this was? It was a guy who played on Motown. Now I'm going back 20 years, but this guy took me to a steakhouse here in Michigan. And I've been from Michigan to California to Georgia back here. And there was this guy, and he was hunched over like this, Joe. I mean, like this. He started to play the vibes, and tears were just falling down, silent tears. It was just amazing. Who was this guy who played the vibes for Motown?
so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to breathe in this question, and I'm going to give you a quick story. Today is my 4th wedding anniversary, and I got a kind of a similar story for you. We got married in July of 2019 before the world ended. And when I met my wife, one of the first dates that I took her on was down here I'm in Kansas City, and we went to the American Jazz Museum, and they have an atrium. They brought in Candino, the wonderful bongo player, and he was 98 years old. They wheeled him in on a wheelchair. Okay, dude. And they pull him up, and he comes up, and the whole world becomes young again. And he just and goes in. And that was a risk for me because I didn't know what she was into. I'm a jazz guy. Let's go. Let's see it. We got a picture with him. She, to this day, we talk about that. We revel in that notion, but it's that idea. Let me think about it, and let me kind of go through the vibes. Sometimes I get so sonically wrapped up into it, names kind of escape me. But let me mull over that, and I'll it may be a middle of the night thing. I'll pop up.
You know, it's an interesting thing. I'm sorry if I'm talking to you. You can always cut it out, but
Yeah, yeah, we're good.
it's an interesting thing because vibes, even like piano, there's some guys like, Art Tatum. Okay, he can play well, but he does not move me. He's more of a technician.
Yes.
And there are some guys who play the vibes with such a light, deft touch. They're team players, like all the guys in James Taylor's band. They were all those studio cats, and they were all willing to be unselfish. I love an unselfish vibes guy.
There's a guy in Kansas City named Peter Schlam. And the thing about Kansas City is we have so many wonderful players that were trained by the great Bobby Watson that may not get the fame they deserve. But Peter Schlam is probably one of the best vibes player ever. He does something called electronic tinks, and he has an electronic interpretation of the vibes. But when Joe Locke came to town, oh yeah, dude, you got to check him out. Write
I'm
down
writing it
Peter
down.
Schlam. Peter SCHLAMB. Just
Oh, MB, I missed the B. Okay.
yeah, he's amazing. So anyway, yeah, he's just his level of acumen, and everybody that knows him that's in the musician community is like he's the best in the world, hands
Wow. I
down.
can't wait to hear.
Yeah. So, but I'm going to load you up with some vibes. I'm so glad you brought that up, and no one's really done that to me. I always tell the vibes players I'm going to be biased, all right, and they're always happy. But I just interviewed a vibes player from Japan who's living in Germany now. Taiko Saito, I believe it is. I'll send it over to you. But she just has a new album that came out that's amazing.
I'm just going back to something you said. You said, in whoever I've interviewed from Milt Jackson has been on this show.
No, no,
Oh,
I
okay.
never got Mill. I got Joe. Any vibes player that's alive, I've
You
talked to him.
got, wow. This is like the end of the terminal. Remember when he's like got that coffee? Oh my gosh.
No, this is all gonna stay in. This is good. We're riffing, we're improvising like vibes guys.
Good. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. We're bopping and scatting, as George Costanza would say.
Amen. So let's get to the crux of what you do for a living.
Okay.
If you're in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day and one of the kids looks up and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Third grader, I would say I tell the truth, and I encourage other people how to tell the truth with sensitivity, respect, and clarity.
So what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I used to make, it's funny that you asked that because here we are on a podcast. Most of the kids were out playing baseball. And it's not that I never played, but I was out making, I had my little cassette player and I was making little cassette plays with
Yeah,
a few of my friends that I could rope in, or Super 8 millimeter thing. So I liked making uh entertainment. Uh,
I dig
uh
it.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember in the early go when I was getting into broadcasting, that was like the dream. I was 4'11" in high school, and I think through all, yeah, I was tiny. So through all these podcasting ventures and all these stories that I go through, which I love, and it's therapy in its own way, I was like, why did I want to get into broadcasting? What is it? And I think I was the youngest child, and I was 4'11", and I had to be that voice. And I remember I used to cut the newspaper out when I was in college, and I'd cut out the sports page and I'd staple it on all these yellow legal pad pieces of paper, and I'd read it into an old tape that I got from a radio station that I was an intern at. I would listen to it, come home and do it. So I get that. Like there was always that part of me that was always working and working. And I knew that if I had a voice and I could get my voice up there, it would somehow, you know, triumph over the size that I didn't have. And I
That
ended up
makes sense.
growing when I was a junior in high school. I shot up, but I remember whenever I was 4'11", I went to a really small, so I we went to a doctor because it was just getting to a point where it was crazy. Because I was like a little like hobbit walking into the school and people would pet me. And I walk in this office, and the doctor that's tending to me is my height. I'm like, dude, what are you going to tell me? What? You're a grown man. You're the same height as me. Anyway, he was great. It all worked out. Everything came through. But anyways, I understand that creative niche. So what I would like to do is delve into your history. I know you've overcome a lot. Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and how this profession came in, because you're not just going to a job, you're giving a lot of yourself. How did this happen?
Yeah, as I look at the word light on my bulletin board, here's how it happened. First of all, it's important for me to say that my relationship with my mom is now entirely respectful. She's incredibly supportive. She bought me this laptop that I'm conversing with you on, this beautiful MacBook Pro. She believes in me. When I was little, the truth is that she would call me smart in the books and dumb in the life, and she would snap at me a lot. And okay, that was painful. But the worst thing that happened in terms of me coping with things was that I was constantly told what a wonderful family I have. And my father, when I came home from a sexual trauma, and it was his mother who was the perpetrator, and I tried to tell him, I said, I was 4, and I said, Daddy, I'm sad. And he said, don't be sad. There are people in wheelchairs. And for the next several decades, whenever I saw someone in a wheelchair, my penis would hurt. How interesting, right? How the psyche works. But I remember trying to cope with that and then getting snapped at. The reality was I was a kid who had a sexual trauma who was told to forget about it. And I did. I blocked it out. I have this incredible memory, but I had managed to block it out, putting a great deal of unconscious effort into it. Okay, so that's my story. In addition, I think I might have mentioned to you in the email, when I was 20, my father confessed a very, very serious crime to me. I was the only person he ever told. Then I become his sort of confidant. But that set me on a path, Joe, because as disturbing as what he told me was, I realized how sacred that moment was. This is a guy confessing something he never told another person on the face of the earth. And I've had someone confess that he used to be a professional killer to me. He saw his dad push his mom out a window. He became a professional killer. I've had a guy who beat someone to the edge of death on a country or on a mountain road, uh, in a road rage incident, and left and didn't know if he had killed this person. I've had people confess affairs to me. I've had women confess affairs to me. I'm a person who people like to open up to. And so I combine that with what happened with my dad. I'm a person people naturally tell the truth to, with the fact that even though I didn't like the way my parents treated me, they were absolutely in love with each other. And who gets to see that as a kid, Joe, right?
Yeah.
So they loved each other so much and with so much boundless safety that I could watch them, smashing their shoulders in, laughing at Johnny Carson, or having their little French press and their glass of coffee. And I would say, okay, but when he does this, I would do this instead. It was so safe, and it wasn't so safe to focus on myself. I focused on them, and I'm like, well, what could I do? What would I do to enhance the relationship? That's how I became a relationship coach. The sort of natural currents
Yeah.
dragging me in those directions.
Intriguing. So who's been your hero in your life?
Well, I want to say myself, and I don't mean that to sound arrogant, but in addition, the people who have saved me, I just talked about this with my friend. There, at the end of Pretty Woman, Richard Gere says, "What happens to the guy, the knight who rescues the princess?" And Julia Roberts says she rescues him right back. That's my current wife. That's the only person who I was ever meant to be with. I just met her at an older age chronologically. She's my hero. I have a network. The discipline is called network spinal. You might have heard of spinal flow,
Mhm.
and it's actually the originator of what is now called spinal flow, is network spinal. That saved me. I used to be laid up for a week at a time with my back, and now I can dance a jig. I'm more flexible with my spine than I've ever been in my life. Sort of like your story where you shot up. I suddenly am fine. I'm healthy, and that's the other thing you said. I'm taking you back to the original question. What I decided when I recovered, because you don't know if you're going to recover
Yeah.
from long COVID. But I went to this energy doctor. My spine started to crack like a candy apple shell. You know, when you crunch into those,
Yeah.
there was crack. I'm like, I'm getting better. And I said, I'm not going to waste a second of my life on anything other than contributing to people's lives, adding value to people's lives. And here I am.
Yeah. Amen. So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Barack Obama came to mind.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll join you there.
yeah, I'd love to talk to him. In fact, and I don't want to disparage people's choices, but I said to myself when I thought Hillary Clinton, it looked like in the polls that she was going to win. I thought to myself, huh, if she nominates a Supreme Court justice, he was a constitutional law professor. He would be a fantastic, he can't serve as president, but he could have been a Supreme Court justice for the
Never
rest of his
too
life.
never too late.
Never too late.
Never too
Never
late.
too late.
You know, this question came about because Bill Clinton is a saxophone player, okay? One of his I think he had a saxophone that was on display at the American Jazz Museum, and I got very close to interviewing him because of his jazz roots, and I really wanted to talk to him, and I thought, man, that's my dream. I would love I saw Bill Clinton come to Kansas City, went to the Truman Library back way back, like in the 2004. Man, I've never seen anything like that in my life. When he came in that room, there was double doors that opened up. It was just like the parting of the seas. It was like, oh my, like you could literally feel the wind and everything stop. And the mastery that he has over words is just, if you see it yourself, you just can't believe that it's real. I mean, it's almost like a reincarnated steroid version of JFK. You just can't believe what you're watching.
Yeah, I saw him on stage here in town in Detroit doing something for the Clinton Foundation, and I had the same experience. And I never thought we would have another orator as
Yeah.
president like
Uh-huh.
him. And then I saw Obama. I'm like,
Oh,
wow, he actually he's a supernova beyond that of Clinton.
yeah.
And I will I don't mean to cast aspersions, but I will tell you a quick story that I used to have this sort of like uh, earthly um, pride about. A girl I was engaged to a long time ago, she went to see him and she was in the third row listening. And afterwards, people were shaking hands and she came up to him and he said, I noticed your necklace. It's a beautiful necklace. I was like, wow. But the president, noticed my fiance. I was kind of proud of that.
That is cool. I took my son when he was about 2 or 3 in a stroller and saw when he came on a campaign stop here in Kansas City. And I remember walking away because my son was done. It was too much. And as I was walking away, all I heard was Obama's voice booming over downtown. And I was like, wow, just sat there and just listened to it. And it was amazing.
And I'll tell you something else. Not only is he such an orator, but not a whiff of scandal in
No,
8 years. In 8 years.
he had one tan suit that blended into the background. Other than that, he's good. Everything's good.
He's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is the motivator for you every day? What gets you up? What gets you moving? What gets you wanting to help people?
That's an I don't know exactly how to answer it other than that I get filled up. I can have a day where all day long I'm coaching, I'm contributing, I'm running live streams, I'm doing group sessions. And at the end, I'm like this, what's next? What's next? I don't get tired of it. In fact, I have to tell myself to shut it off at night and relax so that I can get 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of yourself. You could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom that you've attained throughout your life up to this point. What would you tell your younger version?
Don't get radial keratotomy, that which is where they used to cut your eyes. Don't do that. What else would I? At 20, well, that was when my dad said what he said. I would say people can be confusing and you should not have blind trust for people. You have to trust yourself. That's probably the most important. I would say make sure you trust yourself at least equal to and perhaps over other people.
So we already established the vibes. We both have a shared love. What would be the one live performance you would love to have caught with a vibes player in the moment, in the sweat, in the heat of it? Where are you going?
I have to go Bobby Hutcherson. I have
Yeah.
to. I have to. And Milt Jackson, don't get me wrong. You saw how excited I
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
I love him. But again, there's a bit of just a bit of look what I can do. But I feel like Hutcherson pretty much blends in.
Yeah. He's that
And pardon me.
he's just that blue collar magnet that just he that's the thing about these jazz guys. They're so humble. There's that blue collar groundedness that goes into how they roll.
Yeah, and I want to ask it to you, but before I do, I'm going to ask you the same question. I want to ask you if you know of a guy named Eddie Harsh. Do you remember the pianist?
I don't.
He was the keyboard guy that came in late to the Black Crows. You remember when they added a
Oh,
keyboard
yeah, yeah,
guy?
yeah. Uh-huh.
This guy was a Detroit cat. And he would go around. And again, one of the few musicians, when he starts to play, I start to cry.
Yeah.
So that's another guy that I wish I could have caught live and should have because he was playing all around town and now he's passed. I think an overdose. But oh, I wish I could have caught Eddie Harsh. But yeah, Bobby Hutcherson. What about
Yeah.
you?
It just popped into my head. You were talking about Detroit. I was thinking about the history there and the Kansas City thing. And this, I've never even thought about this before because my son is Miles for obvious reasons. But I think I would love to see Ella's first stage presence at the Apollo when no one knew who she was, and to see that room just get totally blown away. Like when you see those American Idol auditions or America's Got Talent, they're just sitting there and they're like, okay, how much longer we got? And then they start and they're just like this, and then they're like this, and then they're like, holy shit. And then it's just like the tidal wave hits them. So to see Ella in that first moment, because she was painfully shy. I've always heard from people that knew Ella or met Ella is that she was really socially awkward, like really like her native place on this planet was on stage, nowhere else. So when she got
Interesting.
off, doesn't take away from the fact that she was gregarious and I'm sure she had a lot of charms, but everybody I talked to said that it was painful for her to talk to people.
You know what I say about Ella, which I find interesting, is that I knew her when I saw her alive, she was older. And often you see people's creative output change as they age, Joe. And I remember her with those thick Coke bottle glasses getting up on stage and she was kind of frail and she'd start to go. Again, I get emotional. And I would be like, "Oh my goodness, it doesn't matter what age her body is. This woman just she exuded creative energy like Stevie Wonder. You watch
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder, you're like, how can this be happening? How can this all be coming out of one human being?
Yeah, he's a force. Yeah. So of all the things you've done in your life, what are you the proudest of?
My relationship with my wife and my child.
So let's get right to the essence of you. Everyone has a perception of you. You have family, friends, you have colleagues, clients, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
It's funny because when I coach, I say to people, we are the stars of our movie, but what we're watching, much like a movie called Lady in the Lake with Robert Mitchum, we never see ourselves unless we're looking in the mirror. The movie we watch is of the people around us. So my perception of me is is that I know that I am sincere and authentic. I'm always endeavoring. I'm always trying to resensitize myself more and more and more. You know, that Don Henley line, you're losing all your highs and lows. Ain't it funny how the feeling goes away? And he wrote that in his 20s. I'm trying to make sure I live my life with feeling and with gusto. So I imagine that I'm intense to people. But if you bear through my intensity, I always have something to offer you, something interesting, something that might wake something up in you. So I think I'm a person that is worthy of spending time with because I mean you no harm. And in fact, I only mean people well.
Well, and I get that, and I think we're kindred spirits, and I would love if for some reason I'm up in Detroit, you come to KC, we gotta get together proper and see music.
Sold. And I generally eat vegetarian, but I have never had a Kansas City steak. And if you take me to a place that you recommend, I'm going for it.
Well, I'm gonna up the ante on that. Barbecue is really more of kind of the bag, and we could, yeah. We'll take care of you all proper. Like so,
But if barbecue's the bag, we'll do barbecue and bags. We'll listen to Milt.
amen. Yeah, and maybe if we're lucky, Peter Schlam actually. You know what's funny? The Majestic Steakhouse, which is one of our iconic steakhouses that Tom Pendergast used to hang out in. Peter Schlam plays the piano there every week on a certain night, and so you could see him in the flesh.
And I'll make up for not seeing Eddie Harsh. I'll see Peter Schlam. And I have
Absolutely.
this. I can't wait. I have goosebumps.
I love it. So before we get out of this big digital door here we've opened up, if anyone wants to learn more about you, hire you, anything about you, where do they go?
They go to the website. I'll spell my name because it's kind of a tricky last one. It means twig or branch in German, but it's Marshall with two L's. Zweig, Z as in zebra, W-E-I-G as in George, as I say to customer service people all the time, because they might not hear a Z and a G. They can go there and they get my phone number, email, all my information, and hopefully understand how it is that I make a difference for people. What I want to do for people in relationship is to make each other's healer. And I train people to do it. I just don't just dump people in, but we can be each other's therapist, coach, best friend, intimate partner. We can be all of those things with a little bit of training. Love didn't come with a manual, but in my version of reality, what I coach, it does now come with a manual. So that's what I want to spread, more authentic love on the planet.
I love it, and I have no doubt that you're doing it. And you're going to continue to. How do you pronounce your last name again? What's it?
It's a long I sound, so it's Zweig. Zweig is how you would say it in German.
I like it. I like it. Cool. Marshall, this has been an absolute pleasure. This is just the beginning. We'll get back into it.
Can't wait. I really enjoyed myself. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Cheers. Take care, man.
See you in Kansas City.